What's going on, everybody? Jeff D. Lowe here, and it is time to start ranking and tiering things on this YouTube channel. And we're going to start off with Marvel. We'll get right into it, but first, I'm going to let you know where to go to find the best resource when it comes to movies. MovieRankings.net. It is our website here at Lights Camera Barstool that if you have not been to and you're a movie fan, you are missing out. You can find my scores, the scores of my co-host Ken Jack as well. You can filter and sort movies by streaming platform where they're streaming. You can filter and sort by subgenres, movie universes, sports, holidays. There is no movie website in the world, I promise you this, where you can filter and sort and find movies in such a specific manner as you can on MovieRankings.net. If you're looking for just a list of rom-coms from the 2010s, bang, you can go in there and do that. If you want a heist movie that came from just 1988 through 1992, easy, you can do that too. You can find out where they're streaming, where you can rent them, where you can watch them. So many options on MovieRankings.net. We're trying to get user profiles soon too, so you can rate and rank your own movies. Check it out today. Let's get into it though. Marvel movies today. That is what we're going to be tiering. That's what we're going to be ranking. Not just the MCU. X-Men movies, Spider-Man movies, anything under the Marvel umbrella that's been released as a movie, we're going to tier today. So you can yell at me, you can argue, we can debate what's the best and what's the worst. All right, before we put them in the tier, I got to say something. This is not just a tier list of what I think are the best movies. It's going to be a little combination of best and favorite as well, because there's a couple on here that I don't think are very good movies, but I enjoy them. My favorite movie of all time is Ocean's 11. Would I put that on the S tier of best movies ever made? No, probably not. So this is a bit of a combination. If you go to MovieRankings.net, you can see all my ratings for these movies, and I'll reference some of the ratings I have on the 0 to 100 scale. But it's not going to be completely based on what I think the best movies are, because sometimes best, not always favorite, and favorite not always best. But there's a definitive worst, and it's a 2015 Fantastic Four movie. It belongs on a tier of its own. It's barely a movie. Even the director said it wasn't the cut of his movie. Josh Trank, who ended up getting fired from Star Wars. There's a lot of drama from this movie. He said there was a good cut of this movie before the studio got involved or whatever. It stinks. I think Kate Mara, Miles Teller, Michael B. Jordan could have been good. Sue Storm, Reed Richards, and Johnny Storm. I don't think they were objectively horrible in this movie. I just don't think it's their fault. I think it's a bad script. I think the studio got involved and it got messy. Kate Mara's hair changes throughout. Jamie Bell, Ben Grimm. There's more of Ben Grimm in the trailers for the movie than I think Ben Grimm is in this movie. I don't think he even talks to Sue Storm until the end of the movie. This is it's not even. And you know what the thing is too. I will say this is the worst. This is like, if I were to put DC movies in here too and some like non-Marvel and DC stuff, this would be bottom. This would be it. I don't think there's anything worse because Batman and Robin, there's redeeming funny qualities. There's nothing redeeming about Fantastic Four. The Victor Von Doom stuff is terrible. It's the worst, period. I'm going to throw the Ghost Rider movies on the F tier. The problem with the Ghost Rider movies, one, I've never bought into them. It's just never been something that's interested me. I don't love the character. I don't love any of the portrayals we've seen, even the portrayal of Ghost Rider in the Marvel TV and streaming universes. But a Nick Cage ridiculous performance can be great, right? Look at Mandy, or look at, a Nick Cage movie like Pig. Pig's a little different, but just recent Nick Cage stuff has been solid. However, over-the-top ridiculous Nick Cage in the wrong vehicle is completely jarring and off-putting. And for me, though, that's the Ghost Rider movies. There's some great actors and actresses in Ghost Rider. But Ghost Rider, I actually had this odd thought because I rewatched Spirit of a Vengeance. I'm like, was that movie not as bad as I remember? No, it was. It stinks. It's not a good movie. Both Ghost Rider movies belong on the F tier. Next up on the F tier is a movie that I would consider to be the least fun movie on this list. Like Fantastic Four, no redeeming qualities, but it tries to have fun. Elektra, there might be no movie on this list that takes itself more seriously than Elektra. Elektra just said, no, we are not going to have any fun whatsoever. This is not an enjoyable movie. This is a very serious, like basically like action drama. It is terrible too. It has no charm to it. Even Daredevil, bad movie. But even Daredevil, which Jennifer Garner is obviously in as Elektra, like there's a little bit of like attempt at charm. This movie is so fucking dull. It is just drab, dreary, dull, boring, bland. Elektra's bad. Elektra's one of those movies that like lives up to the hype of like being a bad comic book movie. Blade Trinity. Blade Trinity is the movie where they CGI'd Wesley Snipes' eyes. I mean, do I have to say more than that? Ryan Reynolds being in this will always blow my mind. Like, it's not that I forget he's in it, but it's just one of those weird things to see. Blade Trinity is a complete fucking mess. Terrible movie. This the CGI eyes. It's the one of the funniest things. Howard the Duck is on here. Howard the Duck probably doesn't belong in this list, but it is a Marvel movie, so I got to do it. Howard the Duck is just so different than everything else. In a sense, it's like the original big theatrical Marvel movie. You could argue that the 40s Captain America is the first Marvel like movie theatrical, but Howard the Duck, first of all, it's a George Lucas banger. It's just Howard the Duck. Watch Howard the Duck now. Actually, don't. But if you had the opportunity to watch it and you watched it, think about how just like revolting Howard the Duck is. Now think back, like pre-Guardians of the Galaxy, pre like weird movies and comic book stuff we've accepted. Think back to Howard the Duck when Howard the Duck came out, and think about what you would have thought then compared to now. Even crazier. Even crazier. Howard the Duck is it's like a unicorn in a sense. It's just so bizarre. It's horrible too. But they did bring Howard the Duck back. He's in the What If series. He's in the Guardians movies. He's in Avengers Endgame. Comes out of a portal. I would love to see Howard the Duck work. I think they will make it work. But this Howard the Duck is unlike anything. It was supposed to be. I think it was supposed to be animated, and then it had to be live action due to rights. It's just oh my god. The Punisher with Dolph Lundgren. I don't even have a ton to say about this. I've seen it one time. I think it's just a bad movie. It's one of the worst acted movies on this list. Just a movie completely out of its time, where it comic book movies, weren't the rage. Obviously, I get what they were trying to do with someone like Dolph Lundgren, but The Punisher, this movie is bad. I'll never watch it again, ever. You can tell me right now that I'm wrong on this. I'll just take your word for it. I'll move on. I'll never watch it again. Let's do the other two Fantastic Four movies as well. The Fantastic Four movies, I'll say this. They came out before, the MCU craze. I've never been like a huge comic book person. And I'll say this too. I'm not a comic book person. If I reference something in the comics or say something here that's wrong, I hand up. I'm wrong. But I was never into these movies. And I will say this too, is that Batman, the Batman Begins, the Christopher Nolan stuff, I don't know if those movies would have gotten people into comic book stuff and superhero properties because it's so grounded, it's so real. And we've seen Batman, right? We'd seen Spider-Man. Fantastic Four was kind of different. And for me, it turned me off of comic book and superhero stuff. I didn't care about it. They were that bad. I just didn't have an interest in like this, I guess, genre, comic book superhero stuff. If I were to say which one of these is worse, I think Silver Surfer is the better movie, but I think it's dumber in a sense. The Galactus shit is terrible. I love Silver Surfer. I'm excited to see Silver Surfer eventually in the MCU. That's something I can give some props to. I'm excited for Fantastic Four. John Watts, the Spider-Man director, the MCU Spider-Man director, he's doing it. I'm very excited to see it. There's rumors we're going to see Reed Richards in Doctor Strange: Multiverse of Madness. But the original Fantastic Four movies from the 2000s, I like never wanted to watch superhero movies after watching them. It was such a turnoff. X-Men Origins Wolverine. Oh man, this maybe the word. If you're gonna pick a movie, that's the Wolverine, which we'll talk about. I picked the wrong one. Where's X-Men Origins Wolverine? So as I look for it, there it is. Here it is. if you're going to use a movie as an example of what never to do with a comic book movie, this might be it. Taping or surgically removing basically the mouth of Deadpool, a character known for breaking the fourth wall and talking and saying funny shit, is maybe one of the biggest miscalculations in the history of movies. No exaggeration. Like, that's unbelievable. Like, that is truly unbelievable. It's like, I don't know. It's like making Superman. I actually, no. I'm not even going to try to compare it to anything. It's just so dumb. It's an incredible movie. You could maybe argue it should belong with Fantastic Four 2015, but I think there's some redeeming qualities in X-Men Origins. It's so stupid. It's so bad. The Gambit stuff, Taylor Kitsch, the Will.I.Am's role, the Blob. It is a truly horrendous, horrific movie. But I do kind of laugh now and then at it. Like, I almost want to put it on the D tier because it's got like some sentimental meaning because it's just so terrible. It's so stupid. And the fact that X-Men survived and like pumped out 2 really good fucking movies right around the time this came out and after, which we'll get to, is incredible. Like, this is a movie that should like kill a franchise. It was that bad. X-Men The Last Stand. Actually, we're gonna do X-Men The Last Stand and Dark Phoenix because both of those movies were Dark Phoenix movies. Man. Oof. And they're going to do more Jean Grey, Dark Phoenix stuff in the MCU eventually. I hope they don't do it for a long time. Both of these were bad for almost the same reason. Both of these, well, no. So Dark Phoenix came after a bad movie. Apocalypse was bad, and Apocalypse followed up. And actually, Apocalypse, I'm going to throw Apocalypse up here too. X-Men Apocalypse on the F tier. X-Men Apocalypse and Last Stand are kind of similar in a sense that they both came after really good movies, really good sequels. X2, amazing. Arguably the best of the original X-Men movies. Days of Future Past, some prefer First Class, some prefer Days of Future Past. Regardless, they're both highly regarded. And then Apocalypse just tanked off. Apocalypse is just it's too big, right? It's just too big of an event. Also, like, people forget Oscar Isaac was Apocalypse, I feel like. He's about to be Moon Knight, so he gets to like clean his slate of Marvel. And I saw an article where he's like, I was worried about doing the MCU after doing Star Wars. And it's funny to me because I feel like the proper thing for him to say would have been, it worried me to do Marvel again after doing Apocalypse. And I know it's different. This is Fox Marvel, and now I know Disney owns it now, but the MCU stuff he had not done. But regardless, it's just kind of funny he doesn't reference the fact he was in a Marvel property and it was a complete disaster. Apocalypse is terrible. Just a terrible movie. The Quicksilver stuff in that movie was cool, but I mean, that's like low-hanging fruit. Of course it's going to be good. But Apocalypse, the scale was so grand and so dumb, and it just didn't work. Because the scale was grand in the previous movie. In Days of Future Past, and it crushed it. So why not make it smaller scale? Big event. Now drop it down a little bit. X-Men Last Stand, also bad. That and Dark Phoenix, the 2 Jean Grey stories. If anything, Dark Phoenix I like a little more because at least for me, I like the characters more in that movie. I like the Charles, I like the Eric, those versions of them. Not to say that the original Charles and Eric aren't good either. They are obviously good, but the characters in this have been fleshed out over a couple more movies, and I always appreciated what First Class did to set up their storyline. So I don't know, maybe if I'm like splitting hairs, Dark Phoenix takes the cake over Last Stand a little more. Last Stand's also just really dumb. Last Stand's a dumb movie. Dark Phoenix is a bad movie, and there's some, again, production issues as well. I think the Jessica Chastain characters are supposed to be Skrulls. And obviously Skrulls were in Captain Marvel. And I think they were told they couldn't do it. So they changed things up. That's why they're kind of Skrulls, but they're not. They're both bad. I mean, at this point, I don't even know why I'm still talking about them. They're both bad movies. Also, there was I'm going to splice it in now. There's a really funny clip from Dark Phoenix, which is like one of my favorite line deliveries in any comic book movie. It's so bad.
Tell me how we fix this, Charles. Tell me what to do. I don't know what to do.
Let's dive into some Spider-Man stuff now. Let's do The Amazing Spider-Man 2, which I know there's some revisionist history on it. I know people love seeing Andrew Garfield in No Way Home. I get it. I think I appreciate his Peter Parker more now. That movie's, I just don't know. That movie's bad. It's a bad movie. I know some people enjoy it and it's pretty schlocky, but I don't think Elektra works. I think the Rhino thing is absurd. Absurd. Like, it takes you out of the movie bad. The Dane DeHaan, Harry Osborn stuff is just, that's another mess of a movie. It just doesn't. It's just not Spider-Man to me. It's just so not Spider-Man. I don't know. It just takes me out of it. And then Spider-Man 3, similar problem. Just two movies with too many villains. I mean, Sam Raimi doesn't like Spider-Man 3. Like, do I have to say anything more than that? The director doesn't like it. He was forced to use Venom. He didn't like Venom, didn't understand Venom. It sucks that he had to make that movie the way he did, because I think originally, if he was able to make what he wanted to make, it would have been better. I think they wanted him to put Lizard in the next one or in 3 or something like that, and that's why you see Lizard in Amazing Spider-Man. Yeah, those movies are bad. A worse movie though than I think Spider-Man 3 or right around that, at least in terms of enjoyment, is Venom: Let There Be Carnage, and that's a big time F tier movie. Venom: Let There Be Carnage is beyond unique. Out of this list, it's the only movie I can say where it's too fast and too short. Like, it's just, you can have a fast-paced movie. The Dark Knight is arguably the greatest comic book movie ever made, and it's paced incredible. It's one of the most incredibly paced movies I've ever seen. It just hits its beats nonstop. That movie never gives you a chance to breathe, and it does maybe like one or two moments, like some moments of levity and emotion, but that movie finds a way to hold everything up that it's supposed to do for like a moviegoer and never stop. Venom never stops, and you don't know what the fuck's going on. It's just so much like, I'm gonna use a word like a really old people word. It's a gobbledygook. It's just, it's, and I saw it in like the front row of a massive IMAX, and I said, like, I'm gonna give it a chance again. Maybe that's no. I disliked it more the second time. Everything is so ridiculous and over the top and not enjoyable for me. I really, really don't like Venom: Let There Be Carnage. Again, not enough backstory for me to care about any of the characters in the movie, Carnage included. Yeah, I do not care for Let There Be Carnage. It was I had low expectations, and it somehow like exceeded the low expectations, or whatever the opposite of exceeded is. It went below those expectations. Anything else on here? Punisher Warzone, the Ray Stevenson Punisher, and I'll put that next to the the Dolph Lundgren Punisher. Punisher Warzone came out the same year as Iron Man. Insane. It looks like of a completely different era in time. It came out the same year as Iron Man. Just a stupid movie. Violent in a way. Look, I think really badass, violent superhero movies can work. And we've seen it, and they're awesome. Look at the Logans. Look at the Deadpools. This did not work. There's a dinner scene, and it's on YouTube. I know it's on YouTube, where Frank Castle's like killing people at a dinner scene, and it's so violent that it's just borderline funny because it just looks so stupid. F tier. Anything else? Yeah, New Mutants we're going to throw on the F tier. New Mutants, I will say this about New Mutants. I don't hate it as much as some people do. It's not a good movie. It's a mess, but they tried different things. And I almost want to put it on the D tier, but the acting is tough. It's a tough movie acting-wise. It's a little corny, but some of the ideas in New Mutants, I think they've been able to execute, and they reshot it. And it was delayed so many times. I think if they'd been able to execute exactly what they wanted to do, I think New Mutants could have been good, or at least better than where I have it. 2 MCU movies. What about the Incredible Hulk on here? The Edward Norton Incredible Hulk. This could be revisionist history. Stinky movie, by the way. Looks like shit. Edward Norton, he's fine as Hulk. I think he's a horrible Bruce Banner. And Bruce Banner's obviously maybe not like comic lore, maybe not like fandom, but the Bruce Banner part is the most vital part of that character, because Bruce Banner doesn't work and gives a shit about Hulk. Like, the Bruce Banner part of that character has to be enjoyable. And Mark Ruffalo's done a crazy good job for 10 years now, since Avengers. Incredible Hulk, I just never believed Edward Norton as Bruce Banner, and the more and more we've gotten Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner, the less I've liked Incredible Hulk. There's nothing redeeming about Incredible Hulk. Not a good movie. I think Universal produced it too, so it like really stuck out like a sore thumb because Universal, there's rights issues. Like they can the ones who can make a solo Hulk movie because Disney doesn't totally, Marvel Studios don't totally have the rights. Iron Man 3 I'm putting on here. Some people like Iron Man 3. I don't. I really don't like this movie. I hate the twist. I think Shane Black did a good job, like trying to make something a little different and more his style. I think there's some good elements in here, but the twist is such a turnoff to me that I have to put it on the F tier. I think it's better than maybe an F movie. I know I have it rated like below average, but the twist is so off-putting with Trevor Slattery, the fucking Mandarin. I don't like it. I don't. The Pepper Potts stuff at the end. It's just it. We'll talk about. I'll bring it up again when we talk about Iron Man 2. I think that's it for the F tier. So let's move on to the D tier. D tier, Daredevil. Daredevil's an F movie if we're talking about quality, but there's something still funny about Daredevil that I kind of enjoy. It's complete garbage. It's garbage trash. But again, unlike Elektra, it like has a little fun, and I got to give that credit. So there's two movies from this era that I lump together as being stupid, but I like them. And they both star Michael Clarke Duncan. Because I will say, Michael Clarke Duncan and Colin Farrell, they commit in this movie and they have a blast with it. It's dumb, but they have fun. But it's this movie and it's Planet of the Apes from Tim Burton, which is the first DVD I ever owned. So I always associate these two movies together. Rest in peace, Michael Clarke Duncan. Hulk is a movie. The Eric Bana Hulk movie directed by Ang Lee. This movie is leagues worse than Incredible Hulk if we're going on just like movie standards, but I enjoy it more. Like I enjoy getting through it more, even though it's a dumber movie. And the whole trying to make it look like a comic didn't work. But the ambition is there, and that's why I put it on the D tier. I like that he tried. I like that Ang Lee tried to make it look like a comic book. It just didn't work. It's just not a... This was before people, I think, really knew the best way to adapt comic book movies to screen. This wasn't it, but I give it some credit. The Punisher. We'll put The Punisher up here next. Where is it on this list? This is the one with Thomas Jane. The thing about this movie that I like, and it's crazy, I love John Travolta. I think John Travolta could make a very good Jeff Goldblum-esque MCU villain. I think he's bad in this movie, but it's funny. Ben Foster's in it too. This movie was only 4 years before Iron Man. It's almost crazy if this movie was only 4 years before Iron Man. Then Punisher Warzone was the same year as Iron Man, because this truly looks like many eras before Iron Man. I think Thomas Jane is good in the role. The trailer for some reason is so memorable and iconic to me. Him on the bridge with his family after they're killed. Like, I don't know why that like stuck out in my head. I grew up thinking this was like a different movie. But when I finally saw it, like, I don't know, I didn't despise it. It's not good. I love John Travolta in it though, which I know is a very hot take because it's a stupid role. After that, I'm gonna go Venom, regular Venom. I commend Tom Hardy. He is committed beyond maybe anybody in any Marvel movie in terms of like a role, but that doesn't mean it's good. I don't like Venom. I know there's some Venom stands out there. I think Venom is a below average movie, but the thing I think that kills it for me is the whole symbiote storyline. I think the ending with the villain stuff, the rocket ships, I never liked it. Again, it's end of movie, comic book movie storylines. If they get too big, if they get too grand, and it kind of ruins like the characterization and the fun character stuff, which becomes like this big dumb fight movie or whatever. That's basically what Venom was. I think the personal moments between Eddie Brock and Venom should have kind of been A through Z in that movie. And once it comes to the other symbiotes and all that shit, I never like that. I'm just not a Venom guy. I don't know. I do not want Venom in the MCU. And I know Venom is technically, we confirmed that now for Let There Be Carnage, but I don't want that Venom to cross over with the MCU at all. I don't want that. Blade 2. Blade 2 is firmly a D movie. It's crazy to me still that Guillermo del Toro directed this movie, and I think that's why I give it a little bump up, because it's something different. It's a little bit different. It's very Guillermo del Toro. It's almost like Guillermo del Toro influenced somebody who directed a comic book movie. It's not like full on his stuff. It doesn't full on feel like his vibe, but it feels like almost like an homage to it. And it's obviously tough for him to do like his full on vibe when it's like a property, an existing property. But like the good stuff in Blade 2 is not as good as like the really good stuff in the other Blade movie, which we'll get to. So it's not that much worse than Blade, but in terms of enjoyment, I just like the original Blade more. So I got to put this on the D tier. Couple MCU. Well, here I'll do the Amazing Spider-Man's on here. I've warmed up to this movie over the last couple years because I think Andrew Garfield got a little bit of a bad rap. I think he's a good variation of Peter Parker. He's not the Peter Parker that I enjoy most. That's Tom Holland's Peter Parker. But Amazing Spider-Man's fine. It's a little smaller scale. It's a little more personal. It doesn't get wacky like Amazing Spider-Man 2. Amazing Spider-Man 2 gets fucking wacky. And I don't like that. So that's Amazing Spider-Man. And then a couple MCU movies. Thor the Dark World. Chris Eccleston is Malekith. He complained about the makeup. He's like, it's like the worst experience of his life. But then the MCU and Thor popped off again. He's like, oh, I'd come back. Wonder why. Yeah, Thor the Dark World. I think the biggest problem with Thor the Dark World is that I think it's a waste of Loki. I think Loki's fun, and I think Tom Hiddleston's always good as Loki. But I think this came after kind of that bump Loki got from Avengers. And I don't think they did a good job utilizing the character. And the movie that kind of hammers that home is Thor Ragnarok, because they just completely redid the franchise after Thor the Dark World, and it's ended up being a favorite of many people. Black Widow belongs in this on the D tier too. It's the lukewarm water rice cake of the MCU. I think it sucks that Scarlett Johansson, who's great as Natasha Romanoff, didn't get to do this movie earlier. It's just so out of place. Like, I mean, its problems are circumstance of when it was released. You know, that's the biggest problem with Black Widow. I think the Yelena stuff, the Florence Pugh stuff is great. I'm excited for her in the MCU. I think Scarlett Johansson is good in the movie, but I think the villain stuff doesn't quite hit. It's just middle of the road average. That's it's tough. It's a movie I wish was better, and I wish it came out earlier. I think it'd have been it would have felt more enjoyable, but there was just nothing redeeming. That's, I guess, for the people who don't like the MCU, I guess that's kind of the thing. It's like, it has to fit in the universe sometimes to work as a movie and to be completely enjoyable. And Black Widow is kind of middle of the road there. And I think that's the same with Eternals. Eternals is a movie that has a lot of good stuff in it. And I think Chloe Zhao has a vision and has a directing style that is unique. It was awesome to see, an Academy Award winner direct an MCU movie. But I also think that's a movie that fell victim to some tropes in the Marvel Cinematic Universe that makes some of the movies not that great. I think the Deviants were unnecessarily extra characters. I think the villain stuff should have been more condensed. I think the storyline got a little too jumbled, and it just got way overstuffed. I think that was the biggest problem with Eternals. It was just way too jam-packed with shit, and it kind of felt almost exhausting, because I think a lot of like the tender character moments and the personal stuff, well, it was great, and I wish there was much more focus on that than some of like the extra like deviant and other side storyline stuff with the villains. I just thought it was unnecessary. C tier, Original Thor. Original Thor is the weirdest of the Thors. The eyebrows, Chris Hemsworth eyebrows. They stopped dyeing him after this movie, which thank God. This one, I kind of like the fish out of water stuff. I enjoy Chris Hemsworth on Earth as Thor. It's definitely like too overly serious and just doesn't work completely well in the MCU, but it's a movie that I think out of this and Thor the Dark World, I just enjoy more. Also on the C tier, Iron Man 2. I am a defender of Iron Man 2. I don't think Iron Man 2 is that bad. Some think it's the worst MCU movie. I don't get that. Sam Rockwell as Justin Hammer alone is enough. Mickey Rourke I thought was great as Whiplash. Maybe another underutilized villain. Maybe it could have been a villain on a grander scale with a guy who had just won an Oscar. But like Sam Rockwell alone, I hope he's in Armor Wars, the Disney Plus series, because he is so good as Justin Hammer. I liked Iron Man 2. I thought, I thought the Walt Disney Howard Stark vibes thing was cool. I don't hate Iron Man 2 as much as others do. The original Blade is in here. Not a perfect movie by any means, but a fucking blast. It's a fun movie. Wesley Snipes is great in the role. I hope Mahershala Ali's Blade is just as badass. Fits the time, and guess what? It ages well too. Like, it fits that time period, but it continues to still work now, which is kind of a recipe for success with Blade. I like Blade. Avengers Age of Ultron. Avengers Age of Ultron, I actually almost bumped up to a B just out of pure like fandom reasons, because there are some great things. I love the newer Avengers theme in this movie. I think the stuff with Vision is great. Vision lifting the hammer is awesome. The party scene is cool. I like James Spader as Ultron, but it just becomes a little too much of a mess. It's a little sloppy. The Quicksilver Wanda stuff is almost a little too forced in. I kind of wish maybe they'd been introduced in other movies, but I get why they were in there. And Wanda's been a much better character. The Quicksilver thing, I mean, it kind of comes and goes. The final battle stuff has some cool moments with the theme song, kind of like the team up, like in the circle shot for that movie, but it's a little too sloppy. It's easily the worst of the Avengers movies. Deadpool is on here. Here's a weird one. This is why I had to note it's not just best, but it's a mix of favorite and best. I think the original Deadpool is a better movie than Deadpool 2. Like, in terms of just movie, like quality of movie, I think it's a better movie. It's tighter, it's more sound, it hits its beats better. But I think the enjoyable stuff in Deadpool 2 makes me kind of like favorite Deadpool 2 a little more. But Deadpool put on the C tier here. Captain Marvel. And I think the Deadpool thing too, I think a lot depends on how much you are still like into like Ryan Reynolds vibe in movies, because it is kind of the same, whether it's Free Guy or this or like Ryan Reynolds has like the same comedic timing, and if you're sick of that, it might be a franchise that you're not into. I'm excited to see him in the MCU though. Captain Marvel's on here. I think Captain Marvel took a lot of heat. That movie, oh my god, fucking people pissing shit in their pants online about that movie. Ben Mendelsohn, great as Talos the Skrull. Very cool twist in that movie. I think Brie Larson's a great Captain Marvel. The Jude Law stuff, it leaves a lot to be desired. That's the thing. It's like the twist is cool with Talos, but I think like the overall villainy stuff in Captain Marvel like doesn't quite hit. I kind of wish they hadn't gone so by the book with villain stuff in that movie. But I enjoy Captain Marvel, and the Ben Mendo Talos stuff was a nice little twist and addition. Ant-Man and the Wasp. I like Ant-Man. I'm a huge Paul Rudd fan. Also some cameos from Tim Heidecker and Greg Turkington in this movie. Michelle Pfeiffer, Michael Douglas stuff, Evangeline Lilly. Like, I think they're really solid in the roles. The villainy stuff in this movie though leaves again a ton to be desired. Ghost. All right, it was Ghost. It just doesn't. It's not memorable. Walton Goggins, I wish, had been like the main villain here. I don't know. The Ant-Man stuff in this is great. When it gets to the overarching story and villain stuff, I never totally really connected or bought into it. I think the concept was there, like Pym Tech and all that, and the backstory. But I like it. I like Ant-Man and the Wasp, but if we're comparing this to the other Ant-Man, I do prefer the other Ant-Man. Like, I kind of get why people don't love and are head over heels for Ant-Man and the Wasp. Now to the B tier. Here's a movie that, in terms of rating, probably lower, because the ending is fucking stupid. The ending of this movie stinks. It's the Wolverine. But the Wolverine has some really badass shit in it. Great fights, cool samurai stuff. It's in a different setting. You kind of pull Logan out of like the normal X-Men universe. He's in a different world. I like that a lot, and I think there's a lot in the Wolverine that people should try again if they haven't seen it in a while. It kind of gets lumped in with X-Men Origins Wolverine sometimes, and it doesn't deserve that at all, because X-Men Origins Wolverine is just complete garbage. And the Wolverine is not. I enjoy the Wolverine. I think the end of the movie derails it heavily, but I do enjoy it. Original X-Men's a B tier movie. Some of that's nostalgia. I think X-Men doesn't deserve as much credit as it gets, and we'll get to that in a second. So I'll hold off my comments there. Captain America: First Avengers aged very well. That's a B tier movie. I wish we had seen more Red Skull. Some of that Hydra stuff is very intriguing, but I get why. This was early on in the MCU. You don't know how many movies and how long things are going to go, so the villains were kind of killed off. But Captain America: The First Avenger, and I think looking back on it, Chris Evans wasn't as bad as I used to think he was in this movie, but he's definitely gotten better in the role of Steve Rogers. But I like The First Avenger, and I think public sentiment on First Avenger continues to just go up. I think people enjoy it more and more over the years. It's got a lot of fun stuff that really builds the lore of that character. It makes you appreciate and care about Steve Rogers all the way up through to Endgame. Original Spider-Man's in here as well. Willem Dafoe, great. I've never been a huge Tobey Maguire Peter Parker guy. I love the older, wiser Peter Parker in No Way Home. But the Spider-Man, the original Spider movies for me are good. They're definitely good. But I don't hold them as high regard as some people do. And this is where people are going to get mad at me. It's the Spider-Man movies. And I actually think Ant-Man, I like Ant-Man more. I know that's crazy. I wish we'd seen the full Edgar Wright version of Ant-Man. But I thoroughly enjoy Ant-Man. I think Michael Douglas and Paul Rudd have a great chemistry. Michael Payne is funny in the movie. I actually kind of like the villain. Corey Stoll's Yellow Jacket's a cool villain. I like Ant-Man quite a bit. And I'm a huge Paul Rudd fan. What can I say? I think the only movie where his humor and stuff doesn't play is Civil War. I think he seems like almost, you want to talk about fish out of water. It almost doesn't totally work in Civil War, but I like him in Ant-Man. I think Paul Rudd is perfect in that role. Doctor Strange is a B tier movie. I've moved Doctor Strange up a little bit. Probably would have been a C tier movie. Maybe before Spider-Man, before Endgame. Like I really enjoy. Actually, Infinity War. He's really not an Endgame. I really, until the end. I really enjoy the portrayal of Doctor Strange. This movie was solid, but I think it could have been better. It could have been flashier and more fun. And I think we're going to see that with Doctor Strange: The Multiverse of Madness, because when there's more flashy, ridiculous, like you could say the best Doctor Strange thing is when he fights Thanos. And I wish there had been more of that kind of like extravagance to Doctor Strange. I would have liked that quite a bit in this movie. And I think if that had been the case, that Doctor Strange movie would have been an A-tier movie. Shang Chi, Simu Liu, I think is awesome as Shang Chi. I cannot wait to see him interact with other MCU characters. I think that's going to be a dynamite franchise. The end battle, the CGI monster stuff loses me a little bit, but the mythology, the fights, it's just so different, and it felt fresh. And that's why I like Shang-Chi. So that's a B movie. And I would almost put it A tier if I like the final battle stuff a little more. But it just puts it in the B tier. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I think this movie gets a bad rap. I think it's pretty close to an A tier. The problem with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is that I don't think the humor works as well as Guardians of the Galaxy. And that's James Gunn's style. But even like Peacemaker, like it's one of those movies, especially when you look at MCU movies where it's like serious moment, joke, serious moment, joke. And that happens so much in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 that it kind of ruins it at times for me. But the soundtrack is awesome. The characters are great. It looks and feels cool. I mean, the Fleetwood Mac, the chain fight, come on, with Ego and Star-Lord, that's just great shit. I really enjoyed Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. But again, I think the humor for me doesn't quite work as well, and that's why it's in this B tier. Captain America Civil War. This is an A tier movie for many people, but it just doesn't hit for me. I'm not a comic guy. If I was, maybe I'd like it more, but I think the buildup lacks here. It just doesn't feel authentic. Like, I do think Steve and Tony Stark hate each other in this movie at the end of it, or not hate, it's the wrong word. They truly disagree, but I just want a little more buildup, you know? And this came out when Batman Superman came out, when there was this whole thing where both movies like didn't retcon, but they like fourth wall basically acknowledged like the destruction in previous movies. And I don't know, it just never totally worked for me. I think Black Panther's cool in the movie. I think the Spider-Man introduction's cool as well. Both are really neat intros for characters that just kind of jump over a lot of backstory and get going with them. Civil War's great. I mean, I love it. I love watching it as a Marvel fan, but it's not I don't view it as an A-tier movie, and I know many people do. Deadpool 2 is on here as well. I think Deadpool 2 is not as good of a movie as Deadpool 1. With that said, the fun in Deadpool 2 is better than the fun in Deadpool. I think Deadpool 2 kind of falls victim to feeling a little bit of the same like original Deadpool. The train scene is great. The kid is great. I do forget the kid's name. Josh Brolin as Cable, time travel stuff. If I had to rewatch one or the other, I'd rewatch Deadpool 2, even though it's a little sloppier and it's not quite, I think, as fundamentally sound as Deadpool. Spider-Man Far From Home is on here. I think all three Tom Holland Spider-Man movies are almost 1A, 1B, 1C. I think they all have their issues, but they all have mostly really good stuff. Out of the three, I think in terms of quality, I rank this second, but we'll get into why it maybe dips below the other two here in a second. And then Spider-Man 2 is the B tier. I know this might piss people off as well. Doc Ock, great. I don't like the crisis that Peter Parker deals with in this movie. It doesn't work for me. That's it. Like that's the biggest reason. It's good. I have it rated at a 90. It's one of the better comic movies ever made. But in terms of what I enjoy, I just don't enjoy this movie as much as some people do. It's got great Sam Raimi stuff. The like the horror scene in like the hospital with Doc Ock, very cool. But yeah, it's I put it on. I will say I did put it on the C tier. Okay, there we go. Now it's on the B tier. Just not my favorite. Not my favorite. All right, A tier. A tier. Let's put X2 up here. X-Men 2. I think X-Men 2 deserves more credit than X-Men for being like the movie that pushes the next generation of comic book movies forward. I think it's a better movie than X-Men. I think it's like significantly more enjoyable too. I just like X2 better. I think, what's the one scene that sticks out the most to you? I would probably say it's the scene in the White House, the Nightcrawler stuff. I like X2. I watched X2, I think, like a week and a half ago. I'm recording this in I don't know why when I'm recording it matters for you at home, but I did watch it recently. And I think it's a better I think this is the one that was like, oh shit, like comic movies can work. X-Men was good, don't get me wrong. But like they're like, oh, we can move this on to a new age of comic book properties. More so than the original X-Men. Spider-Man No Way Home and Spider-Man Homecoming. I think Homecoming is the best of the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies. I think it's the best live-action Spider-Man movie. I have it tied in terms of quality with Spider-Man 2, but if I were to pick the like definitive best, I think it's this one. This is Peter Parker to me. It's a young high school kid. You know, it just embodies what I think of in my head when I think of Peter Parker and Spider-Man. The Michael Keaton twist, one of the best twists in the MCU. Great villain. Not only is it a twist, it's a twist that just delivers after the twist is done, too, because he's still a great villain. He's there for his family. It's smaller scale. I thoroughly enjoy Spider-Man Homecoming. I know some people don't love it because it's like Iron Man Jr. almost, and there's Iron Man in the movie, but I think all the parts in Spider-Man Homecoming work, and it's a movie that I've never really wavered on since I saw it. I really enjoy Spider-Man Homecoming. No Way Home's on here. I think No Way Home in terms of quality is the worst out of the three, but like by a hair. Again, I think they're all essentially tied to Tom Holland Spider-Man movies, but this movie a little too much leans on wink, wink, nod, nod nostalgia, like, hey, remember this? Hey, remember this? Remember this? And it almost gets in the way of the story because there are some very deep moments here. The Aunt May stuff is great, and I think Tom Holland's awesome in the movie. I love this movie, but it's on the A tier because in terms of just like theater experience, it's up there with almost with Endgame in terms of craziness. So it's got it. That's why it's above. It's probably a B tier movie with Far From Home, but I have to put it in the A tier because the experience of seeing that movie lifts it up there. Two X-Men movies next on the A tier. X-Men First Class and Days of Future Past. I don't know which one I would say is my favorite out of the two. I think Days of Future Past is a slightly better movie, but these two movies are just fucking awesome. They dive so deep into Eric and Charles, and there's great chemistry. between both actors. It is dynamite. Some of the best chemistry in terms of like buddy, and I know they become like enemies in a sense, but like buddy in First Class, and even, you know, to a large extent Days of Future Past, like they work so well off each other that I just love First Class and what it sets up with Days of Future Past. Days of Future Past, I don't know how that movie works. It's essentially like retcon the movie. They're just retconning old X-Men stuff, and they time travel. They bring back old characters. Days of Future Past, I just remember when that movie started, I was like, is this going to work? And then not only does it work, it's arguably the best of like the mainline X-Men movies. But First Class and Days of Future Past are such a good 1-2 punch, and it just makes me hate Apocalypse even more. Because Apocalypse should have been a great third movie in this group, and it just was not. But these are A-tier movies. Days of Future Past and First Class. They're awesome. Black Panther's an A-tier movie for me. Black Panther's a victim of being a Best Picture nominee. I think it unfairly gets slapped with the overrated label sometimes. And I think that's not deserved. I think Michael B. Jordan as Eric Killmonger is a top 3 villain in the MCU. I love Chadwick Boseman in the Black Panther role. He gets lost in that role. Rest in peace, obviously. Lupita Nyong'o, Letitia Wright, Denai Guerrero as Okoye. You have M'Baku, Winston Duke, Daniel Cole. There are so many great little characters in this movie. Thoroughly enjoy Black Panther. And it's got such a like a strange, in a good way, villain crisis at the end. Like there's such an emotional scene at the end. I know the CGI fight is not great. It's like the one disappointment in that movie. But I think, you know, the music, it's Black Panther's an A-tier movie, and I will defend Black Panther. I think if it hadn't been nominated for Best Picture, it wouldn't get hit with that overrated label sometimes. The original Avengers goes on the A-tier. The original Avengers holds up. Concise, hits its beats, it's aged well, great. It was like it's the first movie where you got the sense this was bigger than I think anyone expected. You're like, whoa, like this, you got goosebumps. I got goosebumps for shit that I never cared about. Like, I don't know why I got goosebumps for the, you know, in the middle of the battle when they do the circle around them, they do the Avengers theme, the first like real team up. You know, I was thinking, it's like, when I saw it, like, I don't care about these characters, but I'm feeling like almost nostalgia for people that I've known for like 4 years of movies. Avengers started it all. Still has that good kind of, you know, seriousness mixed with humor. It flows and works well. I just remember at the end of it too. I remember someone in the theater saying, "Oh shit, Thanos," and I was like, "Who the fuck is Thanos?" And now, go figure. Another A-tier movie, Captain America: Winter Soldier. Captain America: Winter Soldier. That one was one where I feel like it was the first time we got to say, oh shit, like these movies can be like good. Like these movies can have like a different quality to it. And the thing is that this is like that spy espionage thriller thing that people want in other Marvel properties. And we really haven't gotten. Like Black Widow, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, like they didn't really come close to living up to what Captain America: Winter Soldier did. The Bucky stuff, bringing him back, is great. Bob Redford's in it. Come on. Winter Soldier is interesting because it's like, oh, there's a direction that these movies can go in. And they haven't really gone back in that direction to that movie. The Russo brothers directed. Obviously, their next projects were they did Civil War and they did Avengers. So like they moved on to different, and I guess in a sense, bigger things. But I wish we'd have more MCU movies that kind of like dove more into a sense of what Winter Soldier did. Because that movie was awesome. Another A-tier movie, and I guess the last A-tier movie before we get to the S-tier, is Thor Ragnarok. Thor Ragnarok is unbelievable. The fact they redid the franchise. The only thing that I don't love about Thor Ragnarok is I think it's good, but it distracts the Sakaar. I wish it was just a Sakaar movie. I wish that's where we were, and maybe at the end we go to Asgard. But I get why, because Asgard in the end of that movie has to explode. Then it leads to them running into Thanos and all that. It sets up the next movies, and I think. Cate Blanchett's good as Hela, but the Jeff Goldblum stuff and the stuff on Sakaar, Tessa Thompson, it's just so fun. The Willy Wonka homage. I love Ragnarok. Korg. It's just such a great rebrand of that character. It's crazy that it worked, and I cannot wait for Thor: Love and Thunder. Cannot wait. S tier. Original Iron Man on the S tier. The movie that started it all. You could say with I could say with confidence, Robert Downey Jr. probably top 5 most important casting in the history of movies. You can hate the MCU all you want, but that working was a domino, the first domino in like the biggest dominoes ever for movies. Like, look, these movies made billions of dollars, and that movie still fucking works. It's just the perfect resetting of a genre, right? We'd seen movies like Iron Man, but Iron Man set up everything before it, especially in the MCU, and I just have such a soft spot for that movie. I still love it, and I don't even think it's even remotely a hot take. It's one of the best comic movies ever made. And the casting is a big reason why. Like, Robert Downey Jr. is just so amazing as Tony Stark. Logan is an S-tier movie, nominated for an Oscar. The best X-Men movie, and I think it's better than every MCU movie as well. I mean, what's there to say about it? I mean, Patrick Stewart, Hugh Jackman as Logan. Like, it's just so emotional and so raw and so gritty. James Mangold made like a Western superhero movie. It's just, it had a lot of hype too. And I didn't think I could live up to that hype, because you're like, this could be corny and stupid, because there have been so many bad X-Men movies, but Logan exceeded that hype. Guardians of the Galaxy belongs on the S tier as well. Guardians did something that Avengers and Iron Man did as well. Guardians made people believe in the weird with MCU, right? Guardians isn't even weird now. That's the crazy thing. Guardians is not weird. But at the time it was. There was a fucking talking tree and a raccoon. I remember being oddly excited for this too, even not as a comic fan. I was like, oh, these Guardians, like, this looks fun. I think that it was the music and the trailers. The music was great. It was just so different, so fresh. And everyone who saw Guardians of the Galaxy fell in love with it. I saw it at midnight, and then I saw it the next day with other friends. Guardians is right up there with the 2 other MCU movies that I have left. Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. They're 1A, 1B for me. They're both the same movie. It's just one big movie. Avengers Infinity War has the great build-up and the great character team-ups and these little adventures and side quests, and then ends in the big battle for Wakanda, where Avengers Endgame has these awesome, awesome character payoffs. Whatever it takes, right? That's what they would do. And Cap swears, and he says, "Hail Hydra," and Tony Stark sacrifices himself. And there's just so many payoffs that are just... And they're all worth it. For 10 years, 20 plus movies, it just felt so satisfying. The end dance scene with Cap. And I know some people were like, that's not of character, but that's it. It was the full arc of development and character and them changing. And Endgame as well, the greatest theater experience of all time. The portal scene is, I cried in the press screening. People were like the fucking New Yorker writing their reviews, and I'm just like tearing up because Doctor Strange came out of a portal. The Avengers Assemble moment, it was one of the most goosebumpy feelings I've ever felt. And then lastly on the S tier, it's Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. A movie that I had no expectations for, and it is a 96 out of 100. It is 3 points higher in terms of rating than any movie on this list. Logan's next at a 93. I think it's the second best comic book movie ever made. Third best superhero property ever made, behind The Dark Knight and the Watchmen series on HBO. It is the best Marvel thing ever made. It is fun. It crushes the multiverse stuff. The music is incredible. The leap of faith scene is, I'm gonna say best ever again. It is a top 3 superhero scene ever for me. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is just, and it's like that comic page to movie look. It's so unique, so different. I love Spider-Verse. It also won a fucking Oscar, which is just very cool. So that's it. That's my list from Fantastic Four all the way up to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Make sure to like and subscribe. Hit the bell icon below. You'll know when we have new videos and interviews coming out. Let me know what you want me to do next. Put in the comments below. What's your S tier Marvel movie, and what's your worst Marvel movie? What should I do next? I kind of want to do 2000s comedies, but let me know below what I should do, and we'll tier and rank things. Go to movierankings.net, like and subscribe, hit the bell icon. We'll talk to you next time.